Alcohol quite literally made me a different person. It impacted me so much and made my life so miserable that despite going to college at the peak time of partying and drinking that the early 2000s praised, I decided to quit alcohol cold turkey. And what's interesting is I am not the only one. Gen Z has become what's known as sober curious, and non-alcoholic drinks are majorly on the rise, which is actually impacting markets and the economy. So today I'm sharing why I stopped drinking, as well as debunking some of these common alcohol benefit myths that I know you've definitely heard a million times before. Let's dive into it. My name's Autumn. I'm a certified clinical nutritionist with my master's in nutrition human performance, and today's video is sponsored by Element. More on them in a bit. Okay, so lots of people are quitting alcohol. Gen Z, compared to other generations, drinks about 20% less alcohol. They're calling themselves sober curious, and some of the reasons why they've listed it includes the cost of drinking. Because drinking is an unnecessary additional cost. Like, you don't need alcohol in order to survive, but it does start to really add up in terms of total cost, especially if you're living on a budget. The second reason is that they're more aware of the health risks. I kind of view it as like my generation's view of smoking. Like, the previous generation smoked a lot, but now we know that smoking is so bad. They also noted mental health risks and the increased risk of anxiety and depression associated with drinking, as well as them being aware of the improved sleep benefits from not drinking. And they're socializing in different spaces, so not just like clubs or the bars. Instead, they're going to places like coffee shops and goat yoga. All of this is driving a shift to people drinking less, not necessarily quitting, but drinking a lot less than previous generations. And in fact, the non-alcoholic drinks industry is expected to rise about 25% between the years of 2022 to 2026. There's also now functional non-alcoholic drinks where they're low sugar and they have some added benefits like L-theanine to help keep you calm, or mushrooms or other vitamins. So you can still partake in these mocktails that look cool, have a nice taste to it, and are fun, but they aren't going to have the negative consequences. And you might be thinking, well, what about all of the health benefits? I've heard so many health benefits of having like the Mediterranean diet, having some wine. Let's talk about that, because the big idea of alcohol being beneficial for health really comes back to the Mediterranean diet. Depending on the source you're looking at, it said that anywhere between 1 to 2 drinks from red wine per day can actually be beneficial. They say it reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease, lowers mortality rates, lowers the risk of type 2 diabetes, increases longevity, and provides antioxidants. But in reality, a lot of these benefits of the Mediterranean diet are probably in spite of drinking, because there are a lot of other aspects to the Mediterranean diet that have nothing to do with drinking, like social connections, focusing on more whole food, eating at home. And then they also just so happen to have some alcohol every now and then. So we really don't know if the benefits are because they're adding in some wine or if the benefits are in spite of the wine, meaning that they would have the benefits regardless of if they had the wine or not, or those benefits could even be better if they did not have the wine. Because red wine does have some antioxidants, but a lot of food does. Blueberries, cacao, kale, lots of other plant-based foods are very rich in antioxidants. It's also important to consider that alcohol actually increases oxidative damage, which means that even though you're taking in more antioxidants, your body actually has a higher demand for them because oxidation is going up as you're drinking more alcohol. Alcohol also greatly worsens sleep, which can lead to weight gain and insulin resistance and hormone imbalance and increased risk of anxiety and depression. Now, it is important to note that there's a bio-individuality when it comes to alcohol. Some people have a more severe response to alcohol than others. This is why you might hear about like the grandpa who had like 5 shots of whiskey a day and lived to be 105, whereas somebody had like the same amount of alcohol and died of liver cirrhosis at 50. One reason could be because people break down alcohol at different rates. This is based on the production of a liver enzyme called ADH, or alcohol dehydrogenase. Some people produce more of it, which means that they can process alcohol faster and they aren't going to get as many of those negative impacts of alcohol, versus some people who produce less of it, and therefore they can have the same amount of alcohol, but that alcohol is not going to be processed as quickly, and therefore they're going to get more of the detrimental impacts of it. There's also even non-quantifiable differences that people have with alcohol, which I'll get into with my own story as well. That includes like just how you feel when you drink. Some people get energized, some people get depressed, some people have very terrible feelings the next day. Like, the bio-individuality of each person's responses definitely ranges, so it's not like a one size fits all. And for myself, I believe that alcohol really negatively impacted me, and I might be one of those slow metabolizers because it made me just so miserable, which is why I essentially stopped cold turkey in my mid-20s. But before we get into that, I want to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Element. Element is an amazing electrolyte company that was created with intermittent fasting, whole food eating, and athletes in mind. It actually contains the sodium, magnesium, and potassium to help balance out electrolyte levels, all without having any added sugar. I've been using Element for multiple years now. I take it pretty much every single day. I notice a huge difference between the days that I take it versus the days that I don't. When I take Element, I feel properly hydrated. I feel energized. I don't get that late afternoon crash. Plus, it actually tastes great. My all-time favorite flavor is their grapefruit salt, but currently they also have their limited release chocolate medley. Each box comes with 10 chocolate raspberry, 10 chocolate chai, and 10 chocolate mint. These are great with hot water to replace other sugary chocolate drinks while still getting your important electrolytes in. It's perfect for those cold nights when you want to cozy up with a little treat that's also in line with your wellness goals. And right now, Element is offering my viewers a free sample pack with any order. That's 8 single-serve packets free with any Element order. It's a really great way to test out all 8 flavors, so you can get yours at drinkelement.com/autumn. This is only available through my link, so make sure to check out drinklmnt.com/autumn. The link is also in the description down below. Okay, so first, my history with drinking. Being honest, drinking at a young age was pretty common where I grew up in LA. I remember kids would start drinking at parties at around 8th grade, which is like 13 or 14 years old. I was too scared. I definitely didn't start drinking that young. I didn't take my first sip of alcohol until it was probably like mid-late high school. And even then, I didn't really drink much. I didn't like the taste. I didn't really love how it made me feel. I just wasn't that interested. And thankfully, drinking in high school wasn't such a central part of the high school experience that I could get by without really drinking. But then I went to college. And I went to college first in Santa Barbara, which if you aren't aware, especially in like the 2010s, was a huge party school. That's not why I went there. I just love Santa Barbara, obviously. But because it was a new place and it's college, I definitely drank substantially more my freshman year of college than I ever had in my entire life. It was very normal to go to parties every single night between Wednesday to Saturday night. In fact, I remember Thursday night was like the really big party night. Like that was when everybody went out. And that was truly what people did in college, especially in Santa Barbara, especially during that time period. If you weren't drinking, you really just weren't involved in like the social life. And I've always been more shy, and it was a lot easier to connect to people by having this like shared common experience. And it did help for a bit because when everyone was out drinking, it was so easy to relate to everyone. You're playing like beer pong, you're playing drinking games. Like if you were the person that put water in your cup while playing beer pong, you basically like got kicked out. So by drinking more in college, especially my freshman year of college, I felt included, I felt part of the group. So it was fine for a bit until it wasn't. So this is what alcohol did to me. I have a very severe history of anxiety. I first remember feeling true anxiety around 4th grade. That was when 9/11 happened, and that was like the first really big scary thing that happened in my life. I was 9 years old at the time, and I remember feeling like things were uncertain and scary and like, wow, these things can happen in real life. Even then, my anxiety didn't really peak or really start to kick off until around 6th grade when my grandpa died, and that was like another major life-changing event. That same year, my brother also got into a really bad car accident where he almost died. So at 11 or 12 years old, a lot of things just felt really uncertain, and I just didn't know how to handle those things. So I had a lot of what I would consider general anxiety, which if you've never experienced it before, the best way I can describe it is like if you've ever felt really, really worried about something and it just is taking over your mind. You can't think about anything else. You feel uneasy, you feel sick to your stomach, and you just feel like there's a cloud covering you where you can't quite concentrate on the things around you because you are just feeling like so wound up. That's how I would feel every single moment of every single day, but without anything to actually attribute it to. So I didn't know why I was feeling that way. I just always felt like that sense of doom and gloom. Now there's other nutritional reasons that I've talked about in the past, specifically the vegetarian diet that I was following for about like my whole life, that I do think greatly impacted that, because there is research showing that abstaining from meat does tend to have higher rates of anxiety. And once I did start to eat meat and dairy, I noticed substantially lower rates of anxiety, but that is another video. I've talked about it in the past. I'll have that linked right up here. But even then, it wasn't until college that my anxiety really exploded, and it specifically coincided with when I started to drink more alcohol. Because after I would drink, I would feel that sense of severe doom and gloom. Like everybody hated me. I had no friends. I had no future. I felt like my breathing was constricted. I couldn't take in the moment. I felt isolated. I felt alone. And that feeling wouldn't stop until then I would go out that night with friends and I would drink and we would enjoy ourselves, and then I would just repeat the process. But thankfully for me, I had a turning point happen pretty early in my life, and it was during my sophomore year, New Year's Eve. So it was actually New Year's Day of 2012. The previous night, there was a party at my friend's house. It was just a normal party, up late, drinking, all of those normal types of things. And the next morning, I remember feeling so physically ill and just waking up with the thought of like, what am I doing? Why do I keep doing this thing that makes me feel so sick? Something that makes me not feel like myself and not feel happy. And I honestly just didn't really like the person that I was when I was drinking. And I never had like a problem with drinking. I could definitely go without drinking. Like it was not my favorite thing. It was more so that it did help me to feel involved, especially at that time in life when everybody in my age group was drinking. So because of all those reasons, I just felt really fed up and like I needed to have a clean slate. So my clean slate started for the new year of my second semester of sophomore year. So I was actually only 19 years old at the time. And I decided I was going to do 30 days no drinking, which at the time seemed like a crazy feat because obviously I was still going to school. I still had all my friends who would still drink. And at first it felt weird. It felt like I wasn't involved. It felt like I wasn't included. It felt like I wasn't going to have any friends, but I would still hang out with my friends at some of these parties, but I just wouldn't stay out as late and I would come home earlier before everyone got too crazy. And I remember like that first feeling of realization of waking up after one of the parties when I hadn't gone out drinking and just feeling good. Like I woke up kind of early for college. I didn't feel that cloud of doom and gloom and anxiety. I was able to go to the gym and exercise and just do things. It made it so that I felt more confident with school. I felt more confident talking to people because I felt good. And the more that I wasn't drinking, the more that I felt confident in my decision to not drink because I was feeling so much better. So inevitably that 30-day slate turned into longer. I decided to go 60 days and then like the whole semester. I just didn't want to stop feeling good. So here's my relationship with alcohol now. After the clean slate, I did reintroduce a little bit of alcohol just here and there, like 1 or 2 drinks when I would go out, but the frequency of when I would go out really decreased. And I started to include more things that were more true to my interests. Like I joined the nutrition club. I volunteered at some of the local elementary schools to teach nutrition. I was training for a marathon and triathlons and I was exercising. I got my certified personal trainer certification. I was reading a lot of books that were in line with just my interests. And because of that, I was meeting more people that were also in line with what I was interested in too. I started to see that not everybody's whole life was surrounded around alcohol, that other people had other interests too, that I could hang out with other people in different ways that didn't have to be centered around alcohol. Now, it's not like I ditched my other friends. My other friends actually eventually totally understood, especially when I told them about how alcohol just made me feel really anxious. And they're like, that's totally fine. Don't drink alcohol. You don't have to. So they did let me put some water in my beer pong cup. And then after I left college and when I started to work, I would occasionally have some wine. I liked going to wineries, but I noticed that even then, even just like one glass was still making me feel just not good the next day. I've just found alcohol just not settle well for me. It does not work for my body. So if I do choose to have it, I know that I'm going to suffer the consequences the next day. So it has to really be worth it. Obviously I'm pregnant right now, so I'm currently not drinking, but I cannot even remember the last time I've had alcohol. I'm trying to think, it's probably been like a couple of years, just purely because I don't like the taste and it doesn't suit my body. So I just don't really have it, which is why I'm very jealous that I'm not part of Gen Z because I would have thrived in that generation of more people like not having alcohol. But it's also important to note that not everyone feels this way about alcohol. Some people can have like a glass or 2 of red wine and it's not going to impact their health. It's not going to impact their mental health, and that's totally fine. I honestly wish that could be me because I do like the culture of like going to a vineyard and having a glass of wine, but it just does not fit my body. And that's the biggest thing with nutrition and wellness that we all need to understand is that there is bio-individuality. There are nuances. You just have to make sure that whatever choice you're making, you're willing to experiment and see what's going to work best for your body, and also know that just because it works for your body, it doesn't mean it'll work for somebody else's. And like I mentioned, there were 2 really big tools that helped me to essentially get rid of my anxiety. It was removing alcohol and adding in red meat and dairy. That was really the last piece of the puzzle that helped to significantly cut down on general anxiety. I really don't get that anymore. So if you want to check out those details, you can find it with this video next. Also, if you're new to my channel and you love this science-backed information, make sure you subscribe right here. Come out new videos every Tuesday and Thursday. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in my next video.